Hi there, fifth grade. I will be reading today Wordly Wise 14E called The Wizard of Menlo Park. In your Wordly Wise books, it's on page 173. So there is a picture of the Wizard of Menlo Park. And you will find out which Menlo Park we're talking about. Like other cities and towns in the late 1800s, New York City was a gloomy place at night. Streets were lit by flickering gas lights, if they were lit at all. Oil lamps or candles were all that people had to illuminate their homes. Thomas Edison had a better idea. In 1881, he built the world's first electric power station in Manhattan. He helped change New York into the brilliantly lit city we know today. We kind of know a different New York today, but they will be brilliantly lit again, I'm sure. Edison was born in Ohio in 1847. When he was a small child, his family moved to Port Huron, Michigan. That's kind of center north, called the Midwest. An attack of scarlet fever left him in delicate health. This worried his parents. They did not allow him to join in the boisterous games played at his school. The other children were not very tolerant of someone who stood apart from the rest, and young Edison had to suffer their taunts. His mother, who was a teacher, decided to take him out of school. She taught him at home, where he learned quickly. Wow, that's what you guys are all doing now, but for a different reason. He asked many questions and liked to experiment on his own and find answers. I hope you guys are asking your parents lots of questions, maybe even being able to experiment on your own with some new things. At that time, much of Michigan was wilderness. I love the wilderness, you guys know that. But the railroad was transforming America by making even the most remote places accessible to the rest of the country. When the railroad came to Port Huron, it provided Edison with his first job. At the age of 12, he was given permission to sell newspapers and candy on the train that ran between his hometown and Detroit. He even printed his own newspaper, which he sold for 3 cents a copy. Can you imagine that? 1880s? No. So this wasn't quite the 1880s yet, but this was probably now about 57, well, if he got his first job, maybe even 1867. When the railroad came to Port Huron, it provided Edison with his first job. At the age of 12, there we go, it was earlier than that, he was given permission to sell newspapers and candy on the train that ran between his hometown and Detroit. He even printed his own newspaper, which sold for 3 cents a copy. I don't know if any of you have brothers and sisters that are 12. I think some of you do. Can you imagine them working on the train that goes from here to San Francisco? Kind of a different world, huh? At 16, he started working full-time on the railroad. For the next 4 years, he was employed as a telegraph operator in different towns. However, there were large portions of the day when he had nothing to do, and Thomas Edison hated to be idle. In addition, he required only 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night. So it was during this time that he began working on inventions along with his experiments. Wow, I hope you guys are getting a good 8 or 9 hours in. At 21, he invented an electrical vote counter for which he was given a patent. This meant that the government identified him as the person who thought up the idea and protected it so that it could not be made or sold by others without his permission. When he was 30, Edison established a research center at Menlo Park, New Jersey. Did you know there was another city called Menlo Park in the USA? On the East Coast, New Jersey. There, he and his associates ran what was really an inventions factory. Hey, we've got a lot of that out here, right? Silicon Valley. Over the next 5 decades, Edison was granted over 1,000 patents by the United States government. 1,000 patents. That's 1,000 ideas that he came up with and registered to call just his own. Perhaps his most famous invention was the electric light bulb. Other inventions included the record player, which he called a phonograph, and the movie camera. These things seemed like magic to people. It isn't surprising that he became known as the Wizard of Menlo Park. The once sickly child outlived most of his schoolmates. When he died in 1931, he was 84 years old. Pretty impressive story, huh? So now we're going to look down at page 174 and try and answer some questions together. Number 1, how does the passage make clear that there were few towns in Michigan during Edison's youth? Remember to use the question in your answer, right? Restate part of the question to get a full sentence answer. So the passage makes it clear that there were few towns in Michigan during Edison's youth by saying it was mostly wilderness. In what way was the railroad important in Edison's early life? Let's say something about his being his first job. The railroad was important in Edison's early life because it provided him with his first job at age 12, right? You might need to pause that there, I don't know, to write down the answer. Number 3, with what invention do most people associate Edison? Well, let's see if I can give you a hint. Most people associate Edison with the light bulb. What is the meaning of illuminate as it is used in the passage?
You want a face mask?
I have one.